All right. Happy Sunday, everybody. Hope y'all are having a great weekend. Time to start to look to the week ahead and see what we have going on, see what we can kind of discern from this past week's price action, and then what we have to prepare for this week. So, a few things. Obviously, another big earnings week. We have Meta, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple of your Mag 7, and then a slew of other semiconductor AI names that will get more of a preview of how the market is going to treat their reports. We've already kind of seen, MU sold off in the past quarter from a great earnings, Intel now being sold from what would be perceived as a great earnings. So we'll just kind of look through things here, talk through some of the things I'm thinking about, what I'm seeing, and how this week could shake out. So another big thing on the docket this week is FOMC. Market does not like uncertainty. I still feel like Warsh is kind of a wild card here, and we now have a higher percent chance of a rate hike this coming week, which I think would really induce some volatility into the market and create a little bit more uncertainty, maybe a little bit of panic. But now September is being fully priced in. I think last time I saw that there's a high probability there's a rate hike. So we have gone from talking about rate cuts back to hikes being back on the board. Obviously, oil. I keep mentioning the 10-year, the dollar, and oil. Oil is putting a lot of pressure on inflation, in my opinion. And we will continue to, even though we've had cool prints lately, the market has not really responded how you would think. There's something else under the surface going on. So, with that being said, it's been a very choppy, difficult range, in my opinion, and that's because of the rotation that we are getting. Now, you can view the rotation a few different ways. I'm not sure which way to, lean on it right now, but rotation in the market, is good, a good sign overall for a bull market to continue because you're seeing money fight for locations to kind of park itself and still be invested in the market. That's why the VIX hasn't really been crazy, even though we've seen, 15 to 20% haircuts in a day in some of these AI names. Uh, but I think the main reason is because there is underneath the hood, there has been a large rotation. That's why I've been talking about breadth throughout the day and kind of what we can expect through that. But conditions have been difficult because one day you'll have the semiconductor AI bid while they pull the plug on breadth from everything else, and stuff ends up staying range bound, right? Because there's no like cohesive movement throughout the market. There's especially on Friday. Semiconductors AI trade absolutely gutted, but 10 of 11 other sectors were green on the day. RSP was up on the day, so you're seeing just kind of this money move around, but we're not really going anywhere. So I think that's why it makes it more difficult. Some setups look good for a day or two, and then they change where the money is going, and ultimately yes, we're staying afloat, but it's not making the most conducive trading environment in my opinion, and things have to be kind of kept tight to the chest for now. So, again, this is going to be another week where there's nothing I'm seeing where I'm like, I have to be in this and I have to be positioned for a big swing because I think a big move is coming. It's still, especially ahead of FOMC. Typically I make fun of people that are like, oh God, it's FOMC, but it's Warsh's second meeting now. We are coming into the possibility of a rate hike very soon. And I do think that's going to shake the market up a bit, which has been pricing in no rate hikes for a while now. So a big wild card amongst more Mag 7 earnings. We've kind of seen what they've done with Google, Meta, Amazon off those reports, Intel off its reports. So I don't think anybody's safe right now. And I see a lot of bull posting about CapEx or, spending money for the AI build out. That's great and all, but if they hike rates, that's not good, right? Everybody's spending all this money, and especially names with debt, or looking to finance their debt or looking to finance more CapEx. They're going to spend more money. It's not a good sign, right? And with the possibility of higher rates, we're seeing things like the XLRE and the XLU continue to kind of hang in there and try and push up, especially on a day like Friday, which typically would be hurt by, rate hikes. So, you could frame that a few different ways. Why is the XLU leading right now with, rate hikes on the table? The 10-year is near vertical. It doesn't really make much sense, but I think it's just kind of a bet against everything else, and uh, still a rotation flight to safety. These are typically defensive safety names, but the question is, and what I'm looking for is, if we get the rate hike, if we get commentary from the Fed being concerned about inflation, Warsh is talking about wanting to change how data is, put together. We get certain numbers for inflation reports. Do they start to sell everything? And then do we actually get like a panic kind of breakdown, right? So that's what the key for me is right now. We're staying afloat because we are getting these day-to-day rotations. There's not really been a day where, yet where everything is just sold off. Like there's not been any panic to any of this. Money's still moving around, money's still shuffling. So it's constructive to see, but it does not create, a ideal trading environment, in my opinion. So with all that being said, let's just take a look at what we have to look at so far, and then we'll kind of go from there. I don't think this is going to be a video where I spend, a lot of time looking at individual setups. This is going to be more so like a broad stroke look at sectors, the overall market, kind of where we're sitting, and then just, how we can deal with this, into the coming weeks. So with that being said, we'll start here with the semiconductors. And obviously this has kind of been the focal trade of AI, right? And continues to be one of the weaker sectors, and has been prone to, some higher volatility, especially within some of those AI trade names. So SMH, where are we? We are at the anchored VWAP from the March low. I have been referencing the April 8th gap up VWAP. I think that is also important, but I think this the March low is giving us a little bit. As we start to lose this area, I think the March low is starting to give us a little bit better reference point, right? You can see us kind of dancing around here now. It's definitely still a valid level. But if you move it down to the March low, you can see that's where we're kind of stopping now at the low points here. So got the save on that gap down last Friday, and we round trip that move, right? We're right back to where we closed. Everybody that had FOMO and was euphoric on this, 2-day balance is pretty much back where they started, especially on some of those AI names. Obviously, some have weathered the storm better than the others, but we saw, MBIS give up pretty much all that pop throughout the week. Bloom Energy made new lows, so definitely seeing some weakness in that AI trade group. So if we run a fib retracement from the March low to the current highs, on SMH, we have a 382 retracement at this 552 area. This lines up with the VWAP from the March low, and so far it has been a pretty supportive area. This is kind of where we stopped on that June 9th low that we were losing on the Qs. But big area through here, right? And I've said, as we maintain this range, don't get too bearish down here at the lows. They could easily come in on Monday and bid the semi trade up again, right at support, and then kind of suck the wind out of everything else that looked good Friday. So wouldn't surprise me here, this 552 area. I'm more leaning so on the, my opinion, or, idea right now going into the week. This gets defended Monday and Tuesday, right, at a minimum, into FOMC. I don't think any big moves are made Monday and Tuesday. As far as like a range break, I think we kind of stay within this, block that we are in. Not a big call there, but just kind of what I'm thinking. If that kind of gets you out of thinking we're gonna get a big move, I think they keep us in this range for the semis until FOMC at a minimum, and then all the big Max 7 reportings. And I don't have the list in front of me, but there are some other AI and semiconductor names reporting this week. So keep that in mind. Major support here on the SMH. I don't really look at 100 days, but maybe time to start just throw them on the chart and kind of keep an eye out here. But because the Qs are right into it. So SMH 100-day at 535. The 50% retracement of this range is down at 515.85, where your 100 SMA is. And then year-to-date VWAP down at 495, that 500 area. So some bigger areas to look at for on the way down. Year-to-date VWAP getting checked wouldn't be like a big deal, but it's going to feel really, really bad if we lose another 10% here on the SMH down into that. So just keep in mind, a lot of the AI trade names bounced off year-to-date VWAP. We're still seeing some of the heavier weighting names obviously hold up well above it, but if we start to see this slip, year-to-date VWAP, in my opinion, isn't like that far out of the question if this breaks down. So just some things to consider, and then also consider that on the SMH, we have lost these very large prints we start to come in, towards the end of June. We had a lot of large prints throughout a lot of different sectors, SMH being one of them. So just for sentiment purposes, we are under that, and we are under this all-time high VWAP. So kind of pinched here between the lows and the high VWAPs until this resolves. Again, don't get too bearish here, don't get too bullish here until we see we are proven otherwise. So SMH, will move on to the Qs. I mentioned the 100-day EMA. That is right where we stopped. We did close under that June 9th low. Kind of looks like a range breakdown, but again, will they make anything easy? Probably not. So we get the probably like a little bit of a bounce here, and try and hold this range into pretty big range here to kind of consolidate into FOMC and earnings. I don't think we get the big true move until we kind of resolve from this into the later half of the week. But again, Q's lost this upper range. We are now down to this lower range we've been consolidating at for about 2 months now, into a 100-day support. And just for reference, you can kind of see it was like a decent line in the sand in the past. That 100-day, 100 SMA is the purple dashed line a little bit below it now. So your SMA is going to move a little bit slower than your EMA. That's the whole point of them. So QQQ on the verge of a breakdown, but don't short the whole until we get a little bit more confirmation. But just things are starting to roll over on the daily. We are getting clues on the daily, while the weekly is still nothing really wrong with this, right? Run-of-the-mill retest of some moving averages here. The 21 EMA on the Qs. Not even look at the weekly on the SMH. That's the whole point of this video. Inside week for all that drama, right? We didn't even break the range, but we have gotten 2 consecutive candle closes under the weekly 8 EMA now. That is a change of character. Weekly 21 EMA is slightly below here on the SMH. So looking for some resolve this week. Not sure. It's a pretty big range bar to get out of, but really need to get out of that big mother bar there on the SMH. And then on the Qs, again, just kind of a run-of-the-mill 21 EMA weekly retest. Doesn't look like a lot's going on, but there has been carnage in the AI trades. It's just more of the mega cap stuff holding up. So speaking of mega caps, let's look at the Mag 7, right? And if you watch these videos, hopefully they're helpful, but we talked about this big failed candle last week into a retracement zone and rechecking that #1 dark pool print, right? Weekly fair value gap, retracement zone from the highs, and then we get the follow through breakdown, right? So price structure was suggesting a possible move lower. Would I have gambled earnings on it? No, I don't suggest that, but price was kind of giving us a clue here, right? We talked about, what it looked like on the daily. You had the big rejection up there, and then we did end up rolling over this week. Kind of tough to trade with the gap down on earnings and everything inside inside bar on Friday. But Mags is looking kind of rough again, right? And people are going to be watching, I would call it that uptrend right there. So people are going to be watching that for sentiment. And, if we haven't run a retracement off here, but if you want some support levels, we pause right at that 707 here so far. So some retracement levels on the way down for Mags, but higher time frame wise, this is starting to look a little concerning. Monthly is still an inside month, right? So beware of the chop within that range until we break either way, but very big range for June. Just, use your higher time frames to kind of reference where we are within a range. As I said, we're at the lower end of that range. Obviously, the rest of the Mag 7 reporting earnings will be a big weighting on this. So to turn and look at, I really don't want to look at SPY. It's just sideways. So RSP, this is one of your reasons why we are holding up, right? Had a big day on Friday upside. Closed up 0.75%, a little bit better. So RSP is part of the reason why we're seeing this range and why we're seeing this difficult action to trade. This isn't very tradable through here, right? Big picture. So that's why we are stuck in this range, but we get our heavier weighting selling, and then our equal weights come in and help prop the market. So good to see for a bull market. As far as the rotation, but again, it makes things a little bit more difficult when one day things are up, another day things are down, and we really aren't going anywhere in the broad picture of things. So RSP, again, trend is your friend on this weekly 8 EMA. Every dip has been bought so far. We broke some lows this week and we wicked back up. A little bit of a couple hanging man candles now, right? If you look that up, not the best look in my opinion here. And I've mentioned we are into this 1618 extension from the March to April, a little bit of a correction there. So into some extension zones. Price is starting to look a little bit tired based on these weekly candles we are printing. But again, no structure break until we get a real break back below that 211.60 area. So to kind of start to look throughout more individual sectors, XLV, definitely still one of the strongest looking sectors here. Big, 2 weekly tests of this weekly 8 EMA. Posted the AbbVie chart and the MRK chart in my journal room. Definitely some of the strongest looking names in the market right now and is helping keep this up. Personally, I think UNH is like a precarious spot at this point, but XLV, we have to take this for what it is right now. This is pretty much just a bull flag above prior all-time highs and above that weekly 8 EMA. So definitely one of the more favorable looking sectors or charts still. More of a defensive flight to safety, and I think we're just seeing some, again, positioning up into midterms, but we've had a pretty big run into that, so I am, kind of open-minded with what they do with this, but, trend is your friend until proven otherwise. A little bit of a broadening high area there, but until those charts, change, this is a sector to keep an eye on. I think AbbVie reports this week. MRK is next week, and you'll get a little bit more guide into that. But UNH is one of the weekly chart setups I was looking at. A big outside bar the prior week against that weekly 200 SMA. This weekly fair value gap from the sell-off. And again, this is a very big retest for UNH. Support for a very long time, for years. Broken and now being retested from below. Just don't get too bullish up here is the thing I'd say. There's been a huge move on UNH, so just keep that in mind. You're kind of in that 618 retracement zone from, actually I should probably use, so keep that in mind on UNH and just what I'm, kind of seeing across the board. But you got a 3-1 setup on UNH, has not been below the weekly 8 EMA for quite a few months now. So possible consolidation zone, don't get chopped up through this 420, 440 area, but UNH has still been one I'm watching. XLI saw some pretty good relative strength this week. Again, continuing to kind of trend up here. It's in a range though, right? It hasn't really gone anywhere. Nice strength the last couple days, but we are still in the same weekly bar from the end of June. So again, the rotation relative strength is there, but we haven't gone anywhere, right? If you've been long throughout this, you've just been burning premium. So XLI popped into a retracement zone here from this move lower. So we'll kind of see what it does. XLI showed some strength here. I do like that FAST weekly look here, but kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place in my opinion. But I've got some alerts set on this one. Definitely more of a boring, slower name, but some massive compression building here if XLI wants to kind of power its way through here. XLP, we keep seeing Costco bulls. We keep seeing put riders, namely, but there's been some larger call action out to later on in the year. Pepsi's been seeing a lot of flow. That's off the low, so more of a defensive sector again. But it's kind of like a lot of these things, kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? It's kind of a crapshoot which way it wants to go. Keep getting closes under this weekly 50% retracement, right? So not really what you want to see, but continuing to consolidate above the 50 retrace from the lows and between the 50 retrace from the highs. So it looks like a lot of indecision. Again, with this price action, you are going to get a lot harder environment to trade, as again, one day it's up, one day it's down. Costco, kind of building out here. I could make a case for it, so kind of open-minded if they do get more defensive on the rotation and we see Costco try to come out of this retracement zone. So XLP, middle of nowhere, again, another sector that is just kind of tough right now. So I think I've covered, just for visual, there's nothing really for me here to say other than XLRE, pushing into highs here. Doesn't really make sense with the rates up, right? With mortgage rates going up. So, it is what it is. It's a defensive rotation right now, but just kind of visualizing. Really hasn't done much, kind of been stuck in this range, but is now trying to peak up over it. Does this broadening formation put a stuff on things if we get some extra commentary into the FOMC meeting? And XLU, your utilities, up into this upper trend resistance that's been consolidating since February. So a little bit of a breakout area here, big weekly outside bar. Definitely some of the strongest names trending have been boring utility names. So not great for options, really. Would love to see some of like the AI powered utility names do something, but in this environment, I just don't know if they will. But something I am watching as far as where price is leading and strength there. So to look at some other stuff outside of that, Bitcoin is kind of in focus for me now, just from some of the moves we saw in the individual names this week. But Bitcoin, just kind of a slow grind up here. We are back to this weekly 8 EMA, has been strong trend resistance since June, right? Since we broke down, rejected last week. Got a little bit of a failed push. We've got 10 hours to see this candle close, but again, rocking a hard place. Major support, not far below, but if trend is your friend and we see a weak candle close here and then a break of lows, we haven't broke a candle low for a few weeks now, right? The last time we did it failed. Buyer stepped in, so if we start to see lows begin to break again, some of the Bitcoin names will be in focus for me for a short. Coin, in my opinion, was a huge failed breakout. We had 1, 2, 3. This was our fourth inside week. Attempted breakout over that 176.48. Spiked into our weekly 200 SMA, our weekly 21 EMA, and failed in a major way, right? This is one of the, I couldn't picture a less bullish looking candle there. So again, if you go to a daily, we are back at the bottom of the range. Don't get too bearish here until we see things actually break down. But in my opinion, this was a failed range break, and now we'll be looking to kind of see where we reject now. For reference, this is IPO VWAP on coin at 170.15, and we continue to live below it. Sellers are gaining traction the longer that happens. So coin got some alerts set for a potential breakdown here, but we will see. MSTR kind of same thing. It's just turning into a big bear flag of this range. So definitely one of the sectors I want to watch as far as starting to look through heavier weighting individual names. NVIDIA is, again, I feel like I'm saying this for a lot of names, rocking a hard place. You could make a case either way. So kind of wait and see what we do here. But without a doubt, inverse head and shoulder structure look. But we keep getting these big fails up here, right? The prior all-time high, this 50 retrace from all-time highs. And we're starting to see this all-time high VWAP. You often see these attempts back over and they fail. And then, here we are again, attempt over, immediately brought back down. Really strong candle close here, right? Immediately brought back down. So, if conditions worsen, I could make a bear case here for NVIDIA, even though it looks constructive and has been trying to kind of take back over as the semis weaken. But, kind of a wait and see. NVIDIA is such a large weighting in everything else that I think this is an important name to watch for sentiment here. And we will continue to I'll definitely be watching this. So back to the upper portion of this range, again, huge support down here. Prior all-time high VWAP, the 200-day yearly open. If we start to lose this 195-ish, 191, 192, definitely a cause of concern for the overall market since it is such a heavy weighting here. So I keep getting asked about Mag 7 names. I'm a big structure guy. I like to see things suggestive of what price can do, and there's nothing suggestive here for me. You have a major support area. I have this breakaway earnings gap just because this was such a big breakaway. It wasn't even earnings, it was a headline. You have such a big breakaway gap here that never filled. This is a change of character and a big line in the sand here. And you can see outside of this blip into the March low, this has been pretty supportive. So back to a major area. We're under the 200-day. Could you make a case for a dead cat bounce here if that's your vision? Absolutely. Do you have a defined risk against earnings low? Yep. But for me, this is just I don't care to do anything with it because I'm just not seeing the vision here, right? And if you go to a weekly candle, is there support here? Yes, absolutely. If you think the market's wrong about the Google earnings reaction, and we are going to bounce here, not a terrible spot in that 312 spot, right? There's 707 retracement from the lows to the highs, and that big breakaway VWAP. So as we start to see some call flow come back in, is this a valid area? Absolutely. So just because I don't like something doesn't mean that, it's not going to work. But for me, I just don't see the edge here, especially as we come into the rest of Mag 7 earnings. So some damage being done, technical rejection up here, regardless of the headline. And, we are making lower highs, but back to support. So as I've been saying, in this kind of range bound market, don't get too bearish down here, but just keep in mind the kind of environment we are in. Meta, been asked about this. Pat myself on the back for telling you not to get super bullish up here because what an ugly week into this week, right? So completely gave up the breakaway gap, and we are back down here into this lower range. Meta is one that stuck out to me, and I should have been looking at monthlies on all these just to show you, but still has a pretty poor monthly structure, kind of a rounding top, kind of a head and shoulders look. But look what we've done on this monthly candle so far as we come into the end of the month, and I have not made that point yet. This is the monthly candle close this week, right? So on top of that, Friday can set up for some moves because Friday on the end of the month usually gives some type of window dressing or markup. You see some type of moves into the end of the month, but monthly candle close, very, very important. Obviously, Meta reports earnings Wednesday night, but so far, what do we have? We have a big failed move higher, right? As we start to work under, moving averages are getting tight here in this 8 and 21 day. 34 has been supportive, but if Meta closes like this or closes lower on the month, not a constructive setup into August. Meta and Google are, together most of the weighting of the XLC, and why I am uninterested in these names. Any Google bet you see now into Wednesday could be a bet on Meta having a different reaction. So again, Meta, another heavy CapEx spender. Great for the AI build out, but maybe not viewed as constructively now if rates continue to go up or the Fed hikes rates. So something to keep in mind coming into a retracement zone, but there's nothing constructive here with all these candle closes lower, that I want to get long ahead of earnings. So again, another thing I will Just kind of let shake out and see what happens. Apple has been the market saving grace. Um, you know, what else can I say that the bid has been very strong here. We had one blip below that 8-day. Semi's AI trade got whacked on Friday, and Apple has been the savior on those days, right? It's no capex spend for Apple. It's kind of been immune to all of that, and I think the market continues to reward it in that fashion. Um, you know, Still playable intraday, absolutely to the long side as long as trend holds up like this. Just coming into earnings on Thursday night. Wait, they're Thursday now? Okay. All right. So we're not even going to get resolved this week until Friday with getting everything out of the way. I think FOMC will give us a clue. But Apple into Thursday night earnings report. Trend is your friend, but not really much to say about this one. It's just been, if you see your semiconductors starting to get sold, go look to Apple for a long. That's one of the best pair trades right now, in my opinion. Short semis, long Apple. And let me go through some of this stuff real quick, and I'll wrap this up into in this video. But some of the stuff from my room, if you remember, we've gotten some really good moves out of these 3-1 candle setups. Now, reference on where we are on these 3-1 candles, are important. When we got the big move on Apple, it was, in a bearish structure, in my opinion. We got the move on Bloom out of the 3-1. That was a bearish structure. Dell, I can't really say this is a bearish structure yet because it has been undoubtedly, strong against the market here. Weekly 8 EMA has caught up to price, was defended this week when the AI trade got hit really hard, right? So Dell, we have to respect the fact that it is relatively strong here, but we also have to take into consideration that breakouts have been failing more often than not in this environment, right? So I'm very weary to say, if this breaks just full port, it's going, way higher, because outside of, a possibility of this breaking up and then right back down wouldn't surprise me at all with what we're seeing. So Dell is, in my opinion, at a pivot point where this is going to break very soon. Maybe we get another inside week. I personally don't see it with FOMC and all the other earnings reports, but anything is possible. But just keep in mind, this is the leader. You want to pay attention to leaders, especially in the stages we are at, because they are going to give us clues. And if we start to break down to lower time frames, I think the daily is giving us a little bit of a clue here. Has it confirmed anything? No. And that's where, looking at charts is like, what is it telling us? But what has it done? Hasn't done anything yet. It's just, it looks kind of guilty here on the daily, in my opinion, with these upper wicks, right? Shooting doji, like shooting star candles here, back-to-back days. But the relative strength here compared to some of the other names is notable. So I'm just getting mixed signals here. But again, we are back to the top of the range in a kind of questionable environment right now for these names. So we will see. I'm open-minded here, but just keep in mind, if this does break out and you end up chasing it, just be careful, right? At like 460-ish area, if you see the break, could make a nice move to 500. Let's draw some extensions for you just so you have some reference of levels. But yeah, 500, your 1272, 540 roughly up there, your 1618. So if we see the semi AI trade turn around and bounce big time here, Dell is on my list for the breakout higher. If we see continued weakness and we see Dell start to break down, I would give a big caution warning to the AI trade, because this is one of the last leaders standing, in my opinion. And speaking of leaders, let's go to AMD. Another 3-1 setup with a little bit, a little bit more of a wick here, right? The Dell candle closed up at the weekly highs. It's really hard to, feel a certain way about that. But this one is a little different. This was a pretty big outside bar. that closed lower, just like Dell. And then this weekly candle, got kind of stuffed by sellers here. Didn't close red. It definitely started to close back towards this lower range. And right now I'm looking at AMD as a semi leader, right? It keeps holding very, very well. I mean, hell, it was, still over its 8 and 21 day like Dell. When a lot of these other names are, kind of getting smushed. So not far from all-time highs for AMD. I mean, even just at the highs on Friday, just, 30 points away. It's not really much for AMD. But this 3-1 setup could lead to some major expansion. This is such a range on AMD. Another inside week wouldn't really surprise me. Just be careful of these look above and fails in this environment. If we do get this weekly inside break, does it peek its head above and then come back into range? If so, I think that is going to be a very big short setup. Otherwise, be careful getting caught in these ranges, right? That's a huge range to get caught off sides in, right? If you get bullish up here and it fails, or you get bearish down here and it looks below and fails. So just be very careful, within this range. But AMD, I would say Dell and AMD are the two semi AI leaders that I really really want to pay attention to on clues for what the market could possibly do here. So I'll wrap it up on those two notes. I think those are the two ones I wanted to talk about. Again, my journal room has a few more charts to look at. I would say, if anything, kind of look at, crowd isn't a major spot. AbbVie and MRK are probably like the healthiest looking bull charts, but are coming into earnings. But yeah, that should cover it. I will see you guys tomorrow. Again, if you have any questions, want me to go through anything, if something doesn't make sense, please let me know. Have a great rest of your Sunday. I will talk to y'all soon.